What's up, dude?
What's up?
So what's on the agenda for today?
Well, today we're here to answer one simple question. Is obesity a choice?
Yikes.
Just kidding about the simple part.
I'm out.
This one's a doozy.
Well, I'm out.
What does that mean? This
A
one's
doozy?
a doozy.
So a doozy refers to a Renaissance term. You know those little things that they spun around? That was
I don't care about all that.
Oh.
So the idea for today's topic comes from a YouTube video. Have you ever heard of the channel Jubilee?
I have.
No, you haven't.
I have. You've told me about it countless times. I just ignore you.
It's a channel that brings people from all walks of life, and they pick a topic, usually a controversial one, and they just have people discuss and have different panels of people talking about it, but like everyday people, not
Not
famous
professionals.
people or anything like
Okay.
that. And this particular episode is really interesting because the topic was, is obesity a choice? And what's cool about it is they had all different types of people. They had people that are currently obese. They had people who were previously obese and have lost the weight. They have people that were always skinny, and they're all like in their little different camps. And then they just ask you a prompt. They'll say a question like, oh, step forward if you think this or that. So for the most part, there were two sides to this argument. There are the people who believe that yes, it is a choice because it's created by behaviors for the most part, and behaviors can be changed. Therefore, it's a choice. It's something that you can choose to do. You can choose to eat healthier. You can choose to exercise. You can choose what foods, not to eat. So that's one camp. And then there are those who believe that for the most part, no, it's not a choice. You can't choose your genetics, which plays a huge role. There are certain conditions that predispose you. There are certain conditions that predispose you to be obese or to carry more fat. So that was pretty much like where the two sides were at. And of course, there was a lot of like in between, and there were people that were arguing for both sides, but that's basically the two big, it's like yes or no, and here's the evidence why. Here's what I believe.
Like you said, it's a good conversation, and it's a complicated conversation because I do believe there's validity to both sides. Of course, there's factors that you can choose, like what you eat, whether you exercise or not, but genetics, of course, is also going to play a role in it. So I'm interested to see what we come up with.
Way to spoil the ending. That was going to be the whole thing.
What's the ending?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why in the beginning, it was obviously a joke when I said we're going to answer a simple question. It's obviously not simple at all, and there's a lot of nuance, and that's why we're discussing it. But it's really interesting because we've been asking clients throughout the week in preparation for this, hey, just out of curiosity, do you think obesity is a choice? And you get some really interesting answers from people.
Yeah.
I think it's because they haven't really thought it through. So I feel like a lot of people in the fitness community are quick to say, yes, it's a choice.
Especially your trainer's asking you, you feel like, do you want me to say yes? But we really don't. We're genuinely curious. Yeah. We're genuinely curious, like if people believe that it is or it isn't. So.
And I think that our viewers are going to be surprised with what we think about this, because they're definitely not just going to say, yeah, it's definitely a choice. You could eat healthy. Everyone can lose weight. Just eat less calories, blah, blah, blah. It's not that simple. So stick around.
Julian 10 years ago would have agreed with that.
I'm pretty sure I would have. Yep. Ignorant Julian.
Things change.
That's why you
guys.
can't Don't skip that part. So let's go a little deeper into each of these points. There is definitely a genetic component to obesity. There's no denying that. Anything from fat distribution to metabolism, appetite regulation, things like that can be dictated by your genetics. And there's certain genes that are either turned on or off.
100%.
Family history. So that's, and obesity is considered by the American Medical Association a disease. So it's not simple. It's a complicated issue, and there's a multitude of factors that play into why somebody's obese. But that's the genetic component of it.
Yeah.
We can't deny that.
I think a big part of that too is the childhood obesity. We all know how hard it is for someone who was obese during childhood to shed that, to lose that. Like you're almost predisposed to be obese as an adult. It's a hard mold to break out of.
For sure. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah, and then something else that's pretty prevalent these days, I train a few women with PCOS, which also directly affects your weight and your metabolism and your hormones. Your hormones get all out of whack, and that affects your weight.
Yep.
So there are conditions, thyroid conditions, there are certain things that are actual medical conditions that play into why somebody wouldn't be able to lose weight or gain weight rapidly.
And we know some of these people, and we've trained some of these women, and we know they're some of the hardest workers we have.
And I'm sure those people are frustrated when an influencer or an expert will tell you, oh, just eat less calories and work out more. It's like, yeah, I've been doing that.
Or they see somebody new join their gym who might be more overweight than they are, and they see results at a faster pace, and they're wondering, Am I doing something wrong when it's not necessarily, might not even be something they're doing? It's
Yep.
something they have no control over.
On the other hand, lifestyle and the choices that you make obviously also play a role in obesity. There's diet and what you consume or what you don't eat, what you choose not to eat. There's physical activity, whether it comes from exercise or just how much you move around, what kind of job do you have. So obviously lifestyle does play a role. And the reason that this camp of the lifestyle, yes, it's a choice, is so strong is because there's a lot of evidence behind what they're saying. And the evidence is the thousands of people who were obese and have lost weight. And they'll be the first one to tell you, yeah, it's obviously a choice because that was me. I've always been obese. I was always overweight. And now look at me. I'm fit. I've worked out. I changed my lifestyle, changed my choices, and
I lost the weight.
willingly, made myself into a fit person. So
Now-
that's,
On that same page, what about the people that say that their style of eating is an addiction? Does that remove the choice from it?
Well, that's what I want to get into next, is how much of this is a choice.
Okay.
We can get real meta here when it comes to how much of it is a choice, but I definitely want to save that for last.
Can't an obese person just choose to change their lifestyle, to exercise, to change with how they're eating? Can they choose to not be obese, I guess is what I'm asking?
They can, but there are definitely challenges that are unique to obese people. A lot of people don't realize that there's something called metabolic adaptation, and when you start restricting calories, the body starts adapting by making you burn less calories at rest. You're kind of holding on because the body sees like, oh, you've been giving me this many calories for this long, and now all of a sudden you're giving me less. It starts to send out signals to eat more. That's why you see when people are on a diet, they're like, I'm hungrier than ever. I just want to eat all the time. It's driving me crazy. So there's metabolic adaptations like that. The body starts releasing certain hormones like ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. So those are some of the challenges that obese people face when trying to lose weight. That's why it's so hard to be consistent in the long term. Now, it's not to say that you can't lose weight. It's just something that you have to consider that this is going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge for a long time.
Yeah, and it's harder for someone who's obese than for somebody who's, let's say, like just slightly above their weight that they don't want to be. It's significantly harder to lose that weight.
Yeah, and there's something called the set point theory where, it's not like hard science, but where your body likes to be at a certain weight. And we've all experienced that, like you and I, we're probably bad examples, but like we don't have to work really hard to like stay within a certain weight. Our body just kind of regulates itself. It'll go up 2-3 pounds, it'll go down a little, but you're kind of always the same. And I don't know about you, but it's like I could eat, like I go on vacation for a week and eat a lot and then come back, and it's like the weight just kind of regulates itself. It likes to be there, right? So that comes to bite you in the ass if you've always been overweight, and that's your set point. Whereas if you were thin or skinny all your life and then you happen to gain a few pounds, it can be a lot easier for you to get back to that, normal weight.
Definitely. Now, something I've experienced a lot with my clients is they tend to eat at times of stress. So when they're stressed, when they're anxious, that's when they start like wanting to eat, especially like bad quality foods. You've had a rough day, you've had a rough week. That Friday comes, man, you just want to get a pizza and some ice cream. And honestly, like it's so hard to tell them don't do it because sometimes life is tough, man, and that's your comfort food. Like, what are you supposed to do in that situation?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You're bringing up the psychological aspect to the obesity question, and I would argue that's the biggest one. Is your mind controls everything, right? So what you tell yourself is what you're gonna do. So if you've grown up eating certain foods and you have this comfort with that food, it feels good in the moment. When nobody can deny that. Eating ice cream feels good.
Those sugary
now.
cereals as a kid, raised on sugary cereal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the psychological aspect that, like I said, is probably harder than any of the others because, you try telling someone who's stressed and their whole life they've been resorting to food, or there is such a thing as, it's controversial, but food addiction. I believe that there's such a thing as food addiction, and I also know for a fact that they make hyper palatable foods these days that are just almost too good to resist. The amount of sugar and fat and salt in those foods, it's not a natural amount. Like, you're not gonna find that out in the forest. Like, berries don't have a ridiculous amount of fat and sugar, and so it just has the right amount of sugar. But nowadays, you can get in any convenience store, you can get something that our ancestors would have been blown away with. Like, and that's the kind of stuff that people get addicted to.
It's difficult, man. Imagine somebody telling you you've had a rough week, you grew up with these foods, you wanna give yourself some sort of release, and your trainer tells you, don't have a pizza, go for a jog. I'll be like, go yourself. What do you tell somebody that's stuck in that loop of I get stressed, I eat, and then I'm unhappy because I ate during my stressful time.
Yeah, there's got to be a lot of psychological work to be done, almost like therapy when it comes to your relationship with food. And that's something that I feel like a lot of fitness professionals need to work on, us included. It's the psychology part of it, because we're not psychologists and we're not therapists. You know, you can't cross that boundary. However, you have to understand that that is the major hurdle, and then you have to have strategies for people to help them overcome that. Because if you believe like what you just told me, then that person's never gonna pick a salad, because you're thinking to yourself, God, I hate this bland food. I just want to go back to eating my comfort foods. And if you're having that internal battle, you're gonna lose that battle 9 times out of 10.
And like we've talked before, if you don't have a supporting party, if your significant other gets home and they're like, yeah, let's have a pizza too, that makes it infinitely harder.
Or worse, they bring it.
That's my kind of partner. No, I'm just kidding. But that's a tough battle to face, because you want somebody to tell you, hey, no, let's go for a walk instead, you know. But it's hard to find somebody that's gonna support you like that.
And a lot of times it's not even conscious. Like we've had people come in here and it's just a lifetime of poor eating habits, and they didn't even realize, oh wow, the stuff that I'm eating has so much sugar or has so many calories, or we've talked about it on the podcast before, but like liquid calories, which is something that I don't really understand a lot, because I guess I've been doing this for so long that like I only drink water and coffee, right, for the most part, and alcohol. But take that part. But a lot of people drink soda, I just saw a guy right now at Publix with a tub of iced tea, and I'm like, dude, do you know how much sugar is in that? And you know, he was overweight, and it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm just drinking a little iced tea with my lunch. Oh yeah, 60 grams of sugar.
Yeah, it's like the people that say like, oh yeah, I got a salad, I had a little iced tea on the side. And it's like, okay, that's how many more calories you're adding just off that one decision.
And pure sugar, that's a blood sugar spike, that's an insulin spike. Like, you just messed up your whole, you know, what you were trying to accomplish with that salad. Yeah. So, all right, so let's get meta, like I brought up before.
Meta quest.
Is personality a choice?
No.
Right? Okay, so
you could choose to not be a prick.
But let me explain myself. So we obviously grew up together. Did anyone have to tell me?
Unfortunately.
Did anyone have to tell me growing up as a kid to go outside and play sports?
No.
On the contrary, you had to like force me to come back home. I was always naturally drawn to sports. I was naturally drawn to exercise. I've been exercising for as long as I can remember, but no one told me that. I was just always the type of person that I like to be physically active. I like to accomplish things like just physically and try and get better, and that's just always been my personality. My point being, you don't choose that for the most part, right? So did the person that didn't have maybe a role model to show them how to exercise, or to take them to the park, or to take them to play sports, or maybe just was naturally drawn to video games and computer stuff, like, okay, so what? You're naturally drawn to what you're naturally drawn to, but is that person at fault for not being the jock, for not being the person that's naturally wants to move? It can get, you know, now we're getting into something where it's more like does free will exist and things like that. This is very out there, but it's something to consider, because I think about that all the time. Like, I'm lucky. I consider myself lucky that I always liked exercise, because I never went down that rabbit hole. But for somebody who didn't, you know, so
it's never been easier to stay home. You don't have to go to rent movies even anymore. You don't have to go out of your house to buy a video game. You literally stay home and you can do everything. So that's becoming harder to lean towards that physical
and kids don't play outside anymore.
Rarely. It's when I see kids outside playing basketball or something, I'm always like, good job, guys. But it's so rare nowadays.
Yeah, and now to people listening, I know what they're thinking right now. It's like, dude, you're taking away personal responsibility from people. If you say, well, I didn't choose to be lazy, I'm just a computer geek.
Yeah.
You're taking away that personal responsibility, and the people that have worked hard to choose to be fit are like, that's BS, because I made the choice.
Choose to what?
I made the choice, and now I'm fit because I made it. So don't tell me it's about personality. Like, hey, I was a computer geek too, and I chose to become, you know, a triathlete or whatever. And I would say, I'm not arguing that. Obviously, I'm a big personal responsibility person. That's what I do for a living. However, you do have to give people that side of things to be like, hey, listen, it's not necessarily your fault
I get
that you
it.
were drawn towards certain things. However, it's time to do something about it, and I can help you get there.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the most important part is acknowledging that it's not easy, but that somebody, that you can make the change, and that you can, even if you're not drawn to it, you can and you should do something about it, because like we say all the time, your exercise is inevitable. As you get older, it becomes a necessity for your bones, for your heart health, for everything. So it should be non-negotiable. And even if you don't like it, like seek ways that you might enjoy it. There's different ways for everybody to do things. Like if you don't want to leave the house, there's meta games, like meta boxing, things that you can do. There's options for everybody at this point. So like you said, it's necessary to acknowledge what you may be drawn to or not drawn to, but you can make changes. Like everyone can change.
So
So
is
is-
obesity a choice?